For more on clickers and multiple choice questions, check out my book, Teaching with Classroom Response Systems. It came out in 2009, which was just as some of the bring your own device systems were coming on board. So there's not a lot in there about mobile learning per se, but there is about the pedagogy and the use of multiple choice questions. That said, now that these bring your own device systems are much more common and you have classroom response systems that use mobile devices, one of the things that makes it easier is to ask students free response questions. So if students have a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, it's a lot easier for them to enter their responses to a free response question. And that gives you a whole new category of questions that you can ask during class. So here's an example. This is a system called Poll Everywhere. There's no clickers affiliated with this. Poll Everywhere allows students to respond via text message or on the web or actually via Twitter if you want to set it up that way. And here's a screenshot from a time I used it a couple of years ago at a new faculty orientation at Vanderbilt. And I asked the new faculty in the audience, what 3 to 5 words come to mind when you think of good teaching? Actually, before I asked them that, I said, how many of you have a device on your person that can either hit the web or send a text message? And, you know, even among faculty, most of them had something like that handy. One of the things I had them do here is actually pair up. So I said, if you don't, just find someone who does, and then you can put your heads together and work together on this. You don't have to have every person in the room having a mobile device to do some of these activities. But I asked them, what 3 to 5 words come to mind when you think of good teaching? And they were able to type in their answers, right? And you see a few of them here: approachable, passionate, knowledgeable, responsive, leadership. The challenge with this, so it's really interesting to see what they come up with, right? I don't have to predict their answers with multiple choices. I can kind of see what they come up with, which is really great. And you can kind of be even more responsive to what your students are thinking or what your audience is thinking. The challenge is aggregation here, because you don't have the bar chart working for you. You have something like this, right? You just have this laundry list of text responses that are hard to make sense of. Here's where the technology hasn't completely kept up. It's easier to submit free responses. I haven't seen a lot of good tools to kind of aggregate them or analyze them on the fly during class. What I tend to do is to, and Poll Everywhere makes this easy, is to turn this into a word cloud. And so in this type of question where students, or in this case faculty, are just giving one-word answers, it's really nice to kind of turn this into a word cloud. Here, the bigger the font, the more frequent the response was. So I can see from this very quickly that a lot of faculty in the room said something about engaging or engagement, approachable, responsive, flexible, right? I can very quickly see what some of the patterns are. These were the more common words. But then you also get to look at, well, what are the ones that only 1 or 2 people said, right? You know, thoughtful, helpful, energetic, focused, clarity, energy. Depending on your question, the words in tiny fonts can be very, very interesting, actually. The kind of Minority Report answers can be interesting. And so, again, you can use this aggregation method. It's not a bar graph. It's not quite as clean as that. But it enables your students to get a sense of what their peers are saying. It enables you to get a sense of what they're saying so that then you can guide discussion around that. And again, there aren't clickers that really do the free response very well. You need some type of mobile device for this. Another quick example, Google Moderator is another tool that you can use that's free. All it requires is everyone involved to have a Google account, which is often practical. And this one is just, it's a very similar kind of free response thing, but it's structured a little bit differently. It works really great for Q&A. So I used this at the end of a workshop once and said, what questions do you have about mobile learning, I think was the topic, in fact. And so everyone in the room was able to then go into Google Moderator. I gave them a link, right, and they typed it into their web browser on their mobile device. Then they go in and they're able to post their questions, right, and also vote on other people's questions. So this is the real power of it, that you can vote up questions. And so after they put their own questions in, they can vote on each other's questions. And so within a few minutes, I see the most common questions kind of bubble up to the top. And so at the end of a class session or a workshop, this works really well. I'll say pair up, come up with a question or two, put them in the system, and then vote on other people's questions. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. So everyone's kind of chatting with their partner and typing away. I'm just kind of watching and waiting at that point, but I can see the questions start to roll in. And then when the questions are in, then I just say, okay, I've got 15 minutes left to answer questions. I'm going to take the top ones in order and see how many we can get through. So it's a really good way to make good use of precious class time. And then the last example from this category that I'll share is something I did in my statistics course a couple of years ago. In this case, I wanted to add a data visualization component to the course, and so fairly early in the semester, I showed students some interesting data visualizations of multidimensional data, and then I said, okay, let me see what you can do. So I gave them a data set to look at. That this was about carbon footprint information for lots of different countries, so different kinds of footprints and capacity and different sectors within the country. And I said, how might you visualize this? And I had them pair up and start doodling things. And then I said, and this, again, this kind of took them by surprise because this was like, the second week of class. I said, okay, pull out your cell phones. And here at Vanderbilt, faculty don't say that very often. But I wanted them to pull out their cell phones, snap a photo of what they drew, and then they could send it to me via text message or email. And a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually send a text message to an email address, and most carriers will handle that quite nicely. And so I had my email up on the classroom computer, and I see all these emails coming in with photos attached. And so then I just picked a few to bring up on the big screen. This was a really low-tech way to do it, right? I just had a computer screen with my email going. They just had whatever cell phones they had handy. I did have a TA that semester, and she was ready with her cell phone. So if there were students who couldn't get theirs to work or didn't have a cell phone with them, the TA went around and was snapping photos and sending them to me. Again, the aggregation was hard. I didn't know in advance kind of which pictures would be worth talking about with the big class. But I picked out a few, and we looked at them and talked about why was this a good visualization, why was this bad. And so it worked out pretty well. So with that, we'll kind of come to the close of this first little section, and I hope I've introduced a lot of good ideas here. It's been a little bit longer than I anticipated, but here's your activity to kind of do between sessions. Think of a course you will teach soon. Brainstorm a multiple choice question you might use in that course, clicker style, and then brainstorm a free response question as well. So kind of play with these ideas. See what you can do. How might you use this in your classroom, multiple choice or free response?